Dozens of snakes were released into the wild in North Florida to eat other invasive snakes.
Florida's got a snake problem, a massive one. And the solution scientists are looking at? An experiment so strange it actually worked.
Researchers have developed robot rabbits. They're lifelike decoys that look, move, even smell.
And now Florida's thinking about doing the same thing. But what happens when that idea goes way too far? Operation Parachute Mice. It all started thousands of miles away, on a tropical island where people woke up one morning to the sound of helicopters cutting through the air. But these weren't rescue choppers or military drills. They were carrying mice, dead mice, thousands of them. Each one had a tiny cardboard parachute strapped to its back, drifting gently down through the trees like some bizarre scene out of a movie. But this wasn't fiction. This was science, or maybe desperation. The place was Guam, a small island in the Pacific Ocean that had been overrun by brown tree snakes. These snakes weren't supposed to be there. They accidentally hitched a ride on U.S. military ships after World War II. And once they arrived, they had no predators, plenty of prey, and perfect weather. In just a few decades, Guam went from a peaceful island full of birds to one crawling with millions of snakes. And when I say millions, I mean it. Estimates hit 3 million snakes at one point. They slithered into homes, short-circuited power lines, and nearly wiped out every native bird species on the island. It got so bad that the U.S. government had to step in. So they came up with something wild, Operation Mouse Drop. The plan? Use the snake's biggest weakness, their appetite. Brown tree snakes will eat anything, even carrion. And scientists discovered something crucial. They're fatally allergic to acetaminophen, the active ingredient in Tylenol. Just one small dose can kill them. So, researchers stuffed the painkiller into dead mice, attached parachutes, and dropped them from helicopters straight into the treetops, right where the snakes hunt. It was part military operation, part science experiment, and completely surreal to watch. But it worked, at least partly. The poisoned mice didn't wipe out the snakes, but they did slow the invasion. The plan cost around $8 million, but for Guam, it bought something priceless: hope. And that success didn't go unnoticed, because halfway around the world, there's another place facing its own reptilian invasion: Florida. The idea sounds tempting. If toxic mice could help Guam, maybe they could help the Everglades too. But here's the thing: Guam is an island. Florida's a living, breathing ecosystem. And dropping poison from the sky here, that's a whole different kind of gamble. When Everglades turned into a snake empire. So while Guam was fighting to get its forest back, Florida was quietly losing its own. Only this time, the enemy didn't come by accident. We invited it in. Back in the late 1900s, exotic pets were the new craze. People were buying Burmese pythons, anacondas, and boas like they were collectibles. Cute at first, sure, until that pet turned into a 15-foot muscle coil that could swallow a raccoon whole. And when owners realized they couldn't handle them anymore, many just let them go. At first, it didn't seem like a big deal. Florida's warm, swampy climate made it feel just like home for these tropical snakes. They had plenty to eat: rabbits, birds, deer, and no natural predators to keep them in check. Within a few decades, the Everglades transformed from a wildlife sanctuary into a snake empire. Today, scientists estimate that anywhere from 100,000 to over 300,000 Burmese pythons roam the Everglades, and that's just one invasive species. Add in the others that escaped into the wild, and you start to realize Florida's ecosystem is completely outnumbered. But here's the real problem: these snakes don't just eat everything, they change everything. Populations of small mammals like raccoons, opossums, and bobcats have collapsed by more than 90% in some regions of the Everglades. Bird nests sit empty. Even alligators, the kings of the swamp, have been found inside python stomachs, and the snakes themselves keep breaking records. In 2023, a hunter captured a 19-foot Burmese python weighing around 125 pounds in Big Cypress National Preserve, the longest ever documented in Florida. And before that, in 2022, biologists found a female python weighing 215 pounds, the heaviest on record in the state. Each discovery proves the same thing. The invaders aren't slowing down. They're getting bigger, stronger, and bolder. It's not just the food chain taking the hit either. The Everglades are a finely balanced web, and when one strand snaps, everything starts to unravel. These snakes aren't just wiping out the species that belong. They're rewriting how the entire ecosystem works. That's why scientists are desperate. They've tried traps, tracking chips, bounties, even night patrols with thermal cameras. But the truth is, pythons are masters of stealth. Their skin blends into the swamp like camouflage, and for everyone that's caught, dozens more vanish into the water. So when word spread about Guam's parachute mice success, people in Florida couldn't help but wonder, could that be the answer here too? After all, both places are warm, overrun by snakes, and running out of options. But there's one catch. Guam is an isolated island with one target species. Florida, it's a jungle of predators, pets, and protected wildlife. And dropping poison from the sky here could be the most dangerous solution yet. The parasite that eats snakes alive. But Florida's snake invasion isn't just about what you see. There's something far worse happening inside them. A hidden killer that's quietly reshaping the entire ecosystem from within. It's a microscopic parasite called Rhylietiella orientalis, and if the name sounds creepy, just wait till you hear what it does. This thing is basically a lung invader, a worm-like creature that crawls into the respiratory system of snakes, digs in, and never leaves. It feeds on the snake's airways, clogs its breathing, and eventually causes pneumonia. Here's the twisted part. The invasive pythons that brought it to Florida, they barely notice it. They've evolved alongside it, so to them, it's just another hitchhiker. But for Florida's native snakes, ones that have never faced it before, it's a death sentence. Species like the pygmy rattlesnake, which grows barely 2 feet long, are being wiped out by something they can't even see. One of these parasites can completely block their windpipe, suffocating them slowly, and it's spreading fast. Every new python slithering through the swamp could be carrying thousands of eggs inside. So now, it's not just that the invasive snakes are eating everything that moves, they're also infecting and killing off the competition from the inside out. That means Florida's native predators are losing both the territory and the biological war. And when local snakes disappear, it doesn't just mean fewer reptiles in the grass. It means more rats, frogs, and disease-carrying pests, because snakes are what keep those numbers in check. It's a ripple effect that's slowly collapsing one of the most diverse wetlands on the planet. What's terrifying is how little control humans actually have here. You can hunt a python, but you can't hunt a parasite. You can catch a snake, but you can't stop what it's carrying. Scientists have started finding these worms not just in wild snakes, but also in zoos and pet enclosures, meaning the parasite isn't staying in the wild anymore. It's moving with us, and that's what makes this invader different. You can see a python, but you can't see this. This parasite is nature's biological time bomb. Invisible, unstoppable, and already ticking. It doesn't strike fast or loud. It waits. It turns the snake's own bodies against them, killing them slowly from the inside out. It's proof that not every predator has fangs. Some destroy their enemies cell by cell. And if Florida's not careful, this microscopic killer could end up doing what no human plan ever could, changing the Everglades from within. Guam's Snake War Playbook. To understand why Florida's scientists are even considering dropping poison from the sky, you have to look back at Guam's war plan, the one that started it all. After the brown tree snakes took over the island, Guam's ecosystem collapsed almost overnight. 10 of the island's 12 native bird species vanished. The forest went silent. No birds meant no seeds being spread, no pollination, and suddenly the trees themselves began to thin out. It wasn't just a snake problem. It was a chain reaction threatening the entire island. The snakes even caused power blackouts, climbing utility poles and short-circuiting wires. At one point, there were as many as 5,000 snakes per 4 square miles. Imagine living somewhere where the power keeps going out, not from storms, but from reptiles frying the grid. Conventional methods didn't work. People set traps, hunted snakes, and even brought in snake-sniffing dogs. But for every one they caught, 10 more showed up. That's when scientists decided to go nuclear. Not literally, but close. They discovered that brown tree snakes are fatally sensitive to acetaminophen, the active ingredient in Tylenol. Just 80 milligrams, about 1/16 of a tablet, is enough to kill a snake. And so, they came up with an insane but effective plan. Drop thousands of poisoned mice straight into the jungle canopy. It wasn't random chaos either. This was a military-coordinated mission. Helicopters flew low over the forest, releasing boxes of tiny mouse carcasses attached to parachutes made of cardboard and paper. The idea was that the mice would land gently in the treetops, exactly where the snakes hunt. Each one carried just enough poison to take out a single predator, minimizing risk to other animals. The results? Surprisingly good, but not perfect. The snakes didn't disappear, but the population finally stopped growing. Guam's bird life stabilized, and for the first time in decades, locals started seeing species that had nearly vanished. Still, scientists knew the operation was just damage control, not victory. Entire sections of forest remained unreachable, and the snake numbers were still in the millions. The U.S. Department of the Interior later spent another $3.4 million to keep the project going. But in the scientific world, Guam's mouse drop became legendary, proof that desperate problems sometimes demand crazy solutions. And that's exactly why Florida's paying attention. The conditions feel eerily similar. A warm climate, a snake invasion, and an ecosystem collapsing under the weight of a predator that doesn't belong. But here's the difference. Guam was small and isolated. Florida isn't, which means what worked on that island might trigger chaos on this one. Why the Florida plan could backfire. On paper, Guam's plan sounds genius. Drop poison mice, kill the snakes, restore balance. Simple, right? But the thing about Florida is, nothing here is simple. Guam was an island, isolated and controlled. Florida is a wild mix of swamps, suburbs, farms, and forests, home to thousands of animal species. Every corner is alive, which means every creature that eats could end up being collateral damage. See, Guam didn't have any native snakes. Florida has 45 different species, most of them native, most of them harmless, and many of them actually useful. They eat rodents, bugs, and even the venomous snakes that pose real danger to people. So, if Florida starts dropping poison bait from helicopters, it won't just hit the invasive ones. It'll hit the locals too, the good guys. And it gets worse. The brown tree snakes on Guam were tree hunters. They stayed up in the canopy. That's why the parachuted mice worked. They landed right where the snakes lived. But Florida's snakes, especially the Burmese pythons, live low. in water, mud, and dense brush. Dropping mice from the sky here wouldn't even reach most of them. They'd just sink, rot, or get eaten by the wrong animal entirely. And Florida has plenty of those. Coyotes, raccoons, foxes, bobcats, panthers, even bears. All of them would be curious enough to snatch a free meal. Sure, one poisoned mouse wouldn't kill a big animal, but eat a few dozen? That could cause liver and kidney failure or even death. And that's a risk no biologist can fully control. Then there's the moral side of it. Because acetaminophen doesn't kill snakes instantly. It shuts down their organs over several days. For animal rights groups, that's a slow, cruel death that turns science into suffering. Even PETA publicly warned that the Guam experiment might have created more pain than progress. And here's the punchline. Even with all the risk, cost, and planning, Guam didn't wipe out its snakes. It just kept them in check. So imagine spending tens of millions to try the same thing in Florida, only to end up poisoning the Everglades and barely denting the python population. That's why most experts agree. Dropping toxic mice into a living, breathing jungle isn't a solution. It's a gamble. And in Florida, where every creature plays a role in keeping the ecosystem alive, one wrong move could turn a snake problem into a full-blown ecological disaster. Playing God with nature. When science gets desperate, it starts looking a lot like faith. And in Florida's case, some people think scientists have already crossed that line, from trying to save nature to trying to control it. Because let's be honest, the idea of dropping poisoned mice from the sky sounds less like biology and more like playing God. It's one thing to protect an ecosystem, it's another to gamble with it, and that's exactly the debate happening behind closed doors. On one side, you've got environmentalists begging for action. The Burmese python invasion isn't just bad, it's catastrophic. Every year, the snakes spread farther north, devouring everything from rabbits to deer. They've become so common that highway signs in South Florida literally warn drivers to report python sightings. But on the other side, you've got ecologists warning that every solution so far has come with a price. Trapping and hunting helps, but barely. Poisoning could kill the wrong animals, and genetic engineering, which some labs are already exploring, might unleash problems we can't undo. The truth is, Florida's not fighting snakes anymore. It's fighting itself, its science, its ethics, and its own obsession with control. And the cost? Enormous. The Guam experiment cost $8 million for one island that's barely 210 square miles. But Florida's Everglades stretch across nearly 1.5 million acres. That's more than 2,300 square miles of wetlands. To match Guam's intensity, it could cost hundreds of millions, maybe even $1 billion, and still barely make a dent. Plus, there's the public reaction. People are already skeptical of scientists meddling with ecosystems. Words like aerial poison drop don't exactly sound reassuring. Residents worry about what happens if pets eat the bait, if the rain spreads the chemicals, or if scavengers, vultures, raccoons, even endangered panthers end up contaminated. And the worst part? The payoff might not even be worth it. Guam's snake problem was slowed, not solved. Florida's is far more complex. It's not one species, it's dozens. Pythons, boas, monitor lizards, invasive frogs, feral cats. Each new fix risks breaking something else. So the question becomes, now where do we draw the line? At what point does helping nature turn into redesigning it? Because every time humans try to force the wild into order, the wild finds a way to fight back. That's why, instead of dropping poison, some scientists in Florida are looking towards something different. Smarter tools, not harsher ones. Machines that move, think, and lure predators out without ever touching the ecosystem. And the first of those machines? They look soft, fluffy, and have long ears. Rise of the robo-rabbits. So, after decades of chasing, trapping, and arguing over poisons, Florida decided to try something that sounds straight out of a sci-fi movie. Robots, but not killer drones or machines with flashing lights. These are soft, furry, solar-powered rabbits. Yeah, robot rabbits. They call them robo-rabbits, and they're the latest weapon in the war against Burmese pythons. The idea came from a simple question. What if we stop trying to destroy nature and start outsmarting it instead? Here's how it works. These robotic rabbits are designed to look, move, and even feel like the real thing. They have built-in heat emitters that mimic the body warmth of live animals, the exact signal that pythons' infrared senses lock onto. They even twitch and shift their weight, powered by solar panels that let them run for weeks without recharging. Each rabbit sits inside a small enclosure equipped with motion sensors and cameras. When a python slithers close and gets ready to strike, the sensors send an alert straight to biologists monitoring the area. Within minutes, trained wildlife teams move in, catch the snake, and remove it safely from the wild. In other words, the robo-rabbits don't kill, they bait and expose. It's cleaner, safer, and doesn't poison the ecosystem. One of these little mechanical decoys costs around $4,000. The program, funded by the South Florida Water Management District, launched with about 120 robotic rabbits scattered through the Everglades. The early results have scientists cautiously optimistic. The robots have already helped locate several large pythons, hiding in places where humans and drones could never spot them. Before this, researchers actually tried using real rabbits and raccoons as live bait. But that method turned out to be expensive, unpredictable, and ethically messy. The robotic versions solve all that. No feeding, no cleanup, and no risk of suffering. They're waterproof, heat-resistant, and can even withstand heavy rainfall and flooding. And if pythons start getting too smart for the fakes? No problem. The engineers already have a plan. Coat the robo-rabbits with natural scent markers taken from real animals. That way, even cautious snakes can't tell the difference. It's part of a much bigger shift in strategy. Florida's realizing that brute force won't win this fight, precision will. Instead of trying to wipe out the snakes with chemicals or chaos, they're using data, tech, and biology to turn the Everglades itself into a smart trap. But the robo-rabbits aren't working alone, because sometimes the best way to catch a snake is with another animal that's been hunting for centuries. Snakes that hunt other snakes. Florida didn't just build robots to fight snakes. It brought back an old legend. A snake so big, bold, and fearless that it eats other snakes for breakfast. Meet the eastern indigo snake, the original apex predator of the South. For decades, indigo snakes were nearly gone from Florida. Habitat loss, roads, and hunting pushed them to the edge of extinction. But now, they're making a comeback, and this time, they've got a mission. In the past few years, wildlife biologists have been releasing dozens of these sleek, black serpents into the wild, not to scare people, but to restore balance. Each one is about 8 feet long, completely non-venomous, and native to the region. They don't just kill prey, they clean up the food chain. Here's why that matters. Burmese pythons don't really have natural predators in Florida. Once they get big enough, nothing dares to mess with them. But they're young. That's a different story. Indigo snakes are one of the few species that can and will eat young pythons, along with rattlesnakes, copperheads, and almost anything else that slithers. This spring, conservationists released 42 eastern indigo snakes into Florida's Panhandle, the largest wave yet. Every one of them was raised at the Orion Indigo Conservation Center in Lake County, part of a 9-year effort to bring them back to their original range. Over 200 have been released so far, and many are already breeding in the wild. But the indigos aren't alone in this mission. Over the last few years, Florida's Wildlife Task Force has quietly built an army. more than 120 robotic rabbits have been deployed across the Everglades, designed to lure pythons out of hiding. Dozens of python-sniffing dogs now patrol the swamps and trails, trained to catch a whiff of the invader's scent. Add it all up, the snakes, the robots, the dogs, and you've got thousands of creatures and machines working side by side to reclaim Florida's wild. It's not just science anymore. It's a full-scale ecosystem comeback, and the results are starting to show. In one recent field video, researchers captured an indigo snake ambushing a newborn python, wrapping around it and swallowing it whole. It's not big enough to take on adults yet, but it's hitting where it hurts, the next generation. By cutting off the population at its roots, the indigo snake could do what traps and poisons never could: stop the invasion before it spreads further. Meanwhile, Florida's also taking the fight public with its annual Python Challenge, a statewide event where hundreds of hunters compete to capture the biggest and most snakes for cash prizes. It's part science, part sport, part survival, and a reminder that everyone, from citizens to scientists, now plays a role. Together, the dogs, indigos, machines, and people form a living network of defense, a modern alliance of nature and technology fighting for Florida's future. And for the first time in years, the state's starting to feel like it might actually have a fighting chance. But this war isn't over. Not even close. Because if Guam taught one lesson, it's that you can't truly kill an invasion. You can only keep it contained. The battle for balance. After everything, the hunts, the headlines, and the half-crazy experiments, one question still haunts Florida. Can balance ever really be restored? Because here's the truth. This war stopped being about snakes a long time ago. It's about control. About humanity trying, once again, to fix what it broke. Guam learned that lesson the hard way. Even after years of poison drops and millions in funding, the brown tree snakes never vanished. They just adapted. The invasion slowed. It never stopped. And now Florida's learning that same lesson in real time. The Everglades were never meant to be a battlefield. They're not something you conquer. They're something you protect. You can't bomb an ecosystem back into balance. Normal doesn't exist anymore. Not when pythons have become part of the landscape. Every year, the numbers grow more alarming. A year earlier, researchers captured a 215-pound female, heavy with 122 eggs, and still, the pythons keep coming. For everyone caught, more slip through the swamp unseen. The damage runs deeper than most people realize. Entire food chains have been rewritten. In some regions, mammals have dropped by more than 90%, leaving the Everglades eerily silent. Rabbits, raccoons, foxes, all but gone. Even the birds have learned to nest elsewhere. What used to be a wetland full of life is now a quiet, breathing reminder of what happens when paradise turns on itself. For years, people laughed at Florida's chaos. Viral photos of gators on golf courses, snakes in toilets, iguanas falling from trees. It was all memes and late-night jokes. Florida was the internet's running punchline. But now, nobody's laughing. Neighborhoods are reporting missing pets. Roadsides are lined with python traps. Tourists whisper about seeing monster snakes in the canals. And the price tag of cleaning up this mess has exploded. Millions every year and still climbing. Florida's trying to pull the problem back under control. But every python caught is just one small victory in a war with no finish line. The goal isn't to win anymore. It's to stop losing. And maybe that's the lesson. No matter how advanced the tools get or how bold the plans sound, nature doesn't take orders. You can drop poisoned mice from helicopters, send in robots, or deploy entire teams of hunters. But in the end, nature always decides the rules. Because the real invasion didn't start with snakes. It started with people. With curiosity, greed, and the belief that we could reshape the wild and walk away unchanged. So no, nobody's laughing now. Not after the record-breaking captures, not after the vanishing wildlife, not after the billions spent trying to undo what one careless decision set in motion. But there's still something left here. Hope. Because every time a python is caught, every hatchling is found, every wetland is restored, it's proof that humans can learn. Maybe balance isn't something we win. Maybe it's something we earn back, one choice at a time. If you found this story as wild as it is real, hit like, share it with someone curious, and tell me below. Do you think nature will ever forgive us?